Today we're working on ropes, knots, and splices. All the information that we will be going over today is found in one of these two books. Your Boy Scout handbook or any field book. So let's turn to page 129 and begin with ropes, knots, and splices. And the first thing we're going to do is learn how to whip the end of the rope. When the end of your rope is a mess like this, it's not of much use. So we have to cut the end off, and we have to whip the end to make it a good, viable piece. And I'll show you. Okay, now that we have a good end, I'll show you how to whip. There's two ways of doing it. First is this way. Take this rope with your string and make a loop with your string on the end of the rope. So now your string comes up, makes a loop, and comes back on the rope a little ways. Take the long end of the string and start making coils. Start wrapping the string around the end of the rope. Doesn't matter which direction you go, as long as you lay nice, tight, neat coils. One right alongside of the other. Now a ½ inch rope should have at least a ½ inch of coils to the whipping. But the important part is to make sure that the string lays neatly one right alongside the other. Okay, now that my coils are about as long as the rope is thick, now I'm ready to complete the whipping. Take the string that you were just using, that end of the string, and put it through the loop you made in the beginning. Like that. Now grab the string at the other end and pull. Now you notice that this string is being pulled underneath the coils that you made. Now watch how, as you pull with your right hand, how the string goes underneath the coils of the whipping. Gets pulled right under. That makes a nice, neat package. Now all there's left to do is cut off the excess string. Okay, another way of doing it is you have the rope cut, so you're down to a good piece of rope. Take a slightly longer string. Put an overhand knot in the string. Now this section with the knot, you lay that over the end of the rope. Now this time you're going to start and work from the end of your good rope in. Doesn't matter again which way you go. Again, you just make nice, smooth, evenly placed coils, one right next to the other. And again, you make the coils as long as the rope is thick. So again, this is a 1/2 inch rope. The coils are going to be at least a 1/2 inch long. Now on this one, you have to pull both ends. As you see in my right hand, you can watch the string being pulled underneath the coils. Now, grab both pieces of string on each end and pull. When you've done that, you're ready to snip the ends of the rope into the string. And you're finished. And now you have one way, and that's the other way. 2 ways of accomplishing the same thing. Now, using the rope that we whip the ends, let's explain the square knot. The square knot is used for tying 2 different ropes of the same size together. And a square knot is very simple. Left, right. Take the left over the right, bring it around. Then go right over the left and bring it around. Now we've made a square knot. You know when you've made a square knot when you can go like this. That's a square knot. So let's do it again. Whatever you do the first time, you do the opposite the second time. Left over right, turn it around, then right over the left and turn it around. Then you have a square knot. As I said, the square knot is used to tie 2 ropes of the same size together. The sheet bend is used for tying 2 different size ropes together. Alright, here we have the larger rope. You make a bite. A bend in the rope is called a bite. You make a bite in the rope. You take the smaller line, you bring it up through the middle of the rope, go around either side, it doesn't really matter, and then this hole that you just made, that's where the rope has to go through. And then pull on this line. And that's called a sheet bend. Let me show you again. Make a bite in the larger rope. Come up through the middle. Go around the bottom, up the other side, and the hole that you just made with your line, bring that through. And then pull on the end of the smaller rope. And that is a sheet bend. Used for tying 2 different size ropes together. On page 134 of your Scout Handbook shows the bowline. Here it shows how the bowline is tied. And now I'll show you how the bowline is tied. Okay, you're down in a ditch and you're trying to get out. and a friend up on the hill has a rope, and he throws you the rope. Now you have to tie a knot around yourself to get pulled out. What knot are you going to tie? Well, you're going to tie the bowline, and it goes like this. You grab the rope, put one end around your waist. Take the part of the rope that your friend still has and make a loop like this. Notice that the part your friend still has is underneath the part that you have. Your part is on top. So when you make the loop, it's like that. Now take the other end of the rope that's around your waist now and come up out of the loop, go around the part of the rope that your friend has, and go back down into the same hole. Grab these three lines with your right hand and pull with your left hand. And that's a bowline. This knot is around your waist now, and it won't slip down and pinch you, and your friend can now pull you out. Let me show you that again. Throws you the rope, put it around your waist, and you make a loop. This is also known as the bunny rabbit knot. If you can picture this as the bunny rabbit's hole, this is the tree next to the bunny rabbit's hole, and this is your bunny rabbit. The rabbit comes out of the hole, goes around the back of the tree, and that crazy rabbit goes right back down in his hole again. Pull on these three ropes with your right hand and push with this rope with your left hand, and that makes a bowline. It's used for rescue because it won't slip down and pinch you. Okay, turn the page, and we're now on 136 and 137. On 137 is the two half hitches, and that's used to tie a line to a pole. The two half hitches is used to tie anything to a pole, like this. Rope goes over the pole, you make a loop. Then you make another loop, and the rope comes out of the hole you just made. So it looks like that. Two half hitches. Let me show you again. Rope goes over the pole, simple loop, and then another simple loop. The point is, you want to make it where this rope is coming out, this rope wants to go in. The taut line hitch is tied almost the same way. This would be tied to a tent stake or to a pole. Same idea. Over the pole, go one loop. Now at this point, you make a second loop. So you have two loops instead of one. And then again, you cross over and you make your loop. And that will slide like you're going to tighten up a tent pole, tent stake, the line on your tent. Taut line is used for tying tent line to a stake or to a pole. Same idea. Let me show you that one again. 2 half hitches, you make 1 loop. Taut line, you make 2. Over the pole or the stake, make 1 loop, then make a second loop. And then where this rope is coming out of, see how that rope goes through there and comes out? You want to bring that rope in that opening. So it looks like that. Tighten up your knot. Alright, so now if you want to adjust your tent, it'll slide. That's taut line. The next knot is the clove hitch. The clove hitch is used to start most lashings and to end all of them. The clove hitch is done like this. Over the rope, over the pole, make an X. You can see there's an X there. And then bring this line, your X is still there, bring this line through here, and then pull both ends. You know you have it right when you can pull both ends and it won't come off. Let me show you that again. Throw the line over the pole, bring it around, make an X. You see the X? Bring the rope through and go up the same side and pull it through. And that's a clove hitch. When you want to use a rope to drag a log, tie it with a timber hitch. The timber hitch begins by placing the rope over the log, take it around the bottom, and up the other side. And when you come up the other side, take it around the standing part of the rope, and now at this point, you want to go around the same end that you came around the log with. You want to go back on itself. This rope is here, the rope that you came around with. You want to wrap it back on itself 3 or 4 times. Now it's around itself. Now take and slide it down so that it's tight. That is the timber hitch. And then to continue to use it to pull the log, put a half hitch in the rope, go over the end of the log, and now you have something that you can pull. You have the timber hitch with a half hitch. And now I can drag this log and not have any problems. Okay, let's review for a moment. The square knot. Explanation of what it's used for is found on page 140. It's used in first aid for tying bandages. I also mentioned that it's used to tie 2 of the same size ropes together. The sheet bend. Used to tie 2 different size ropes together. In this illustration, this boy through this boy a line, a small line, and he's tying it to a stronger, heavier line. This boy will pull the rope back, and he'll have a strong rope to be rescued. But it's used, sheep bend is used to tie two different size ropes together. On page 142 is the bowline. Here in the illustration, two scouts throw a rope down to a boy that's down below. He ties the bowline, goes around his waist, and they can pull him up. The two half hitches. Here he's using it as a clothesline. He tied a rope to two different poles, in this case two different trees, and he used it as a clothesline. In this illustration, the taut line hitch. He tied a tarp or tent to a stake. This knot will slide and tighten or loosen, whatever you want it to do. The clove hitch, which I mentioned is used to start most lashings and end all of them. And the timber hitch, good illustration. Tie the timber hitch on the end, put a half hitch on this side, and he can pull the log. The timber hitch is used to start some lashings. The diagonal lashing is where you use the timber hitch. On all other lashings, you use the clove hitch. But on the timber hitch, on the diagonal lashing, you use the timber hitch. Okay, the figure 8 knot and the sheep shank. I'll show you those real quick. The figure 8 knot is just a knot you'd want to put in the end of a rope, maybe to keep it from coming back through a hole, or maybe if this rope wasn't whipped, you would keep the end of the rope from unraveling with it. And basically, it's the same as the overhand knot, except you go one small difference further. An overhand knot is like that. That's an overhand knot. Where a figure 8 knot is the same idea, except instead of coming through to make the overhand knot, you go around one more time, around the outside, and then back through the hole. And it makes a figure 8 knot. It looks somewhat like a figure 8. Just like the overhand knot, just like this, but instead of coming through there, go around it again, and then go through. And that's the figure 8 knot. The sheep shank is used for shortening a long length of rope. It's not a good idea to cut a rope if you can make it shorter without cutting it. That way you always have a long length of rope. And the easiest way that I find to do the sheep shank is to lay the rope down on the ground. Make kind of an S out of the rope. Either this way or this way. Doesn't make any difference. Take this part of the rope, which is called a bite, and this standing end of the rope, and make a loop, and put the bite through the loop. In the same way, take this side, make a loop, and put that through. Now you've taken a longer piece of rope and you've made it shorter. The only problem with this, when you let up, it sometimes falls apart. But that is a sheep shank. And it's strong. It won't, as long as you keep tension on it, it won't come apart. Okay, the square lashing is when you want to lash two poles together at a right angle to each other. And the square lashing, begins with the clove hitch. Clove hitch goes over, under, cross over, and come up the same side that you went around on, so that it looks like that. Okay, which I showed you earlier in this tape. So you're going to start with the clove hitch. Then it's a matter of going under, over, 3 times. Each time you do this, you want to try to keep it as tight as possible. Notice how every time I go around, I keep it tight. Alright, once I have 3 wrappings, and I feel they're as tight as I can make them, then it's time to frap. And my frapping, it's just going around your wrappings that you made. We'll do that about 3 times, and again, you want to keep it tight. Okay, once you're going around 3 times, you're almost finished, and you need to end with a clove hitch. So, you make the clove hitch the same way as you did when you started. The trick is always to keep it nice and tight, and that's a square lashing. The diagonal lashing is used when you want to lash 2 poles together, not at a right angle to each other. This is the only lashing that begins with the timber hitch. So you go under your logs, under both of them. Remember, in the timber hitch, you bring the rope back on itself, and then you go around 3 or 4 times, like shown. Then tighten it down. Okay, now this lashing has 2 sets of wrappings and 1 set of frapping. So we begin by wrapping it this way, same direction as your timber hitch. Go around once. Again, trying to keep it tight. 3 times. Now once you've gotten 3 times this way, now you want to go 3 times this way. Each time, trying to keep it tight. The tighter, the better. Laying the ropes one right next to the other. Okay, now I have 3 going that way. Now it's ready to wrap. I should say frap. 3 wrappings this way, 3 wrappings this way, now ready to frap. This is where you really want to make it tight. Okay, and then you want to end with the clove hitch, and really you can put it anywhere if you want. That is a diagonal. Obviously tripod, meaning there's 3. There's also shear and round lashing. And the hardest thing between shear and round is remembering what the name is for each one. What I'm going to show you now is shear lashing. That's 2 poles positioned like this, and you have clove hitch that starts, you have wrappings, you have frappings, and then you end in a clove hitch. So you make your clove hitch. Start your lashing with the clove hitch. Okay, and then now you're going to wrap. With all lashings, you want to keep your ropes, each wrapping, one right next to the other. You want to keep them close and tight. So it's going to look the same on the top as it does on the bottom. Okay, once you have enough wrappings, then it's time to frap again. And that goes like this. Keeping it as tight as you can when you get to the end, now you're going to finish this off again with the clove hitch. Okay, begin with the clove hitch, end with the clove hitch, wrappings, frappings, and that is a shear lash. Okay, round lashing is when you want to make like a flagpole. You want to put poles together and extend them out to make the pole seem longer. You put one round lashing here and another round lashing here. Begin and end with a clove hitch, and they just have wrappings. There are no frappings. And it goes like this. The clove hitch goes over both poles. Not just over one pole, but it goes over both poles. Give yourself rope to work with. So you start with your clove hitch. Okay? And then now, you just wrap. And believe me, this is really important that you keep your wrappings tight, because there's no frappings now to help you snug it up. So you want to make it as tight can be. Lay each wrapping right next to the previous one. And when you get a significant amount of wrappings, then you end with a clove hitch. Didn't leave myself enough rope there. Just take one wrapping off. Okay, and you end with the clove hitch. Now you want to do the same thing with another piece of rope on this side. Same way, start out with a clove hitch. There's your clove hitch, and you do it again, keeping it as tight as can be, one wrapping after the other. maybe an easy way to remember that this is a round lashing is that you go around both sticks. And the clove hitches go around both sticks. Where in all the other ones that you use a clove hitch, it only goes around one of the sticks, or logs, or whatever you're using to, whatever you're making. Okay, when you think you have a sufficient amount for what you're working with, again, you end in a clove hitch. In the clove hitch. And that is a round lash. Two poles that you've extended. Now, you could make another one up here and farther up the line, and you can make a very large flagpole or anything else you want to use it for. Okay, the tripod lashing starts with a clove hitch, ends with a clove hitch. You have wrappings and frappings. It isn't as important as the other lashings to keep this one tight, because at the end, when you spread the legs out, it'll take up a lot of the slack that you have in your wrappings and frappings. If you make it too tight, you won't be able to stand the tripod up. So let's begin, like we do with most lashings, with the clove hitch. Okay, now we have our clove hitch. Now we're going to wrap and frap, but like I said, it doesn't have to be it's not as important to have everything really, really tight. Okay, once you think you have enough wrappings, then start frapping. Around 2 or 3 wrappings on each between each log. And when you think you got enough there, then go to the other one. Okay, when you have 2 or 3 around each one of those, then again, you end in a clove hitch. Okay. That's what it looks like when it's done. Because it's not really that tight. There you have a tripod. Okay, so reviewing a little bit, the square lashing. You start with a clove hitch. You first wrap. Okay, do 2 or 3 wrappings. Then you're ready to frap. Start frapping around. Okay, and you end with a clove hitch. All right, that's the square lashing. When you want to lash something at a right angle to each other. Okay. Diagonal lashing. Okay. It's when you want to lash something that's not at a right angle to each other. You start with a timber hitch. Tighten it up. First wrapping. Then you cross and do the cross wrapping. And then you start doing the frappings. And then again you end with the clove hitch. Alright. Then the 3 that I finished up with. Shear lashing. Starts with a clove hitch. You have wrappings and frappings, and you end with the clove hitch. Then I showed you the round lashing. Okay, where the clove hitch and the wrappings, and there is no frappings, go all the way around both poles, and you do them in pairs so they don't twist. All right, and then the last one I showed you was the tripod, where you don't want to make your wrappings and your frappings tight, which is just the opposite of what we showed you in the upper square lashing and the diagonal lashing. You want this to be rather loose so that when you stand the tripod up, it can be stood up. You're not fighting against what you did. Okay? And that's all the lashings they teach you in the Boy Scout Handbook. And all this is found on page 151. Okay, on page 156 and 157, they show you splices. On the first page is the I splice. It's putting a loop in the end of the rope. On the top of page 157, they show you the crown knot that starts the end splice or back splice. Same name, end splice or back splice. And then in the bottom of page 157, they show you the short splice. You want to marry 2 ropes together. And it takes a lot of practice. And the first time you do it, you'll have a hard time. But just keep at it and you'll be able to do it. Okay, the I splice. Start the I splice, unravel the end of the rope so you have your 3 working ends. Then take a piece of string, and right where the rope is good again, that's where you want to put the string. The whole idea of the string, or you can use tape or whatever else you want to use, it's just something to keep the rope from unraveling any more than where you want to start from. Put a knot there, and then when you're done splicing, and we can take a pair of scissors and cut the string out. So all that is just a stopper right now. Okay. Now this may be difficult to see because you're working with the same colored rope, because it's the same piece of rope, and it's going back on itself. Now you want to determine how big a loop, how big of an eye, that's why they call it an eye splice, how big of an eye you want to put in this rope. Obviously, the farther down the rope you go, the bigger the eye is going to be. You can make the eye very small, or you can make the eye very big. All depends on where you want it. So let's just say, for example, we want to make it about that big. All right. At this point, you want to lay right where the good rope begins, right where your string is, right to where you're going to marry it into the standing part of the rope. And basically what we're doing is we're going to uncoil, we're going to untwist part of the rope where you want the eye splice to begin, and stick through, shove through, thread through, whatever you want to call it, one of the frayed ends, like so. Just shove one right through the untwisted part of the rope. You want to do the same thing with the other two pieces. The trick is to try to get them to do it all in the exact same part on the rope. If you don't do that, then your splice won't look very neat. Okay, once you've gotten all three to come out on different parts of the rope, all one-third the size, now you're ready to go to weave it down. Over, under, under. Each strand, each of the three strands should go under and over different ones. If you've gone over with the one next to it, then you go under it with the next strand. Okay, and again, this just takes practice. And if you can follow, I'll try to talk the way through it. Now, it's very difficult to see on the camera, but I've gone under this piece. Now I want to go over the next piece. So I untwist the rope and go over, then under with that strand. Okay, like so. Now, stop and go to the next strand. Now, I've gone under this one, so I want to go over the next one and under the next one. Uncoil the rope, shove it through. Okay, now stop, go to the next strand. Okay, I've gone under this one, so now I want to go over this one and under this one. Once you've done each one of them once in a sequence, stop, lay it out, and wait. Two things you can do. One, you can roll it in your hands like this, try to flatten it down. Or if you're working on a hard surface, you can roll it this way and flatten it down. And you can see we're starting to get the rope to where it looks like it's married together, both sides. All right, so then pick another strand, see the piece that you want to go over, uncoil the rope, then go under. Stop, go to the next piece. You want to go over the next one, under the next one. Okay, stop, go to the third one. Over, under. You just continue going over, under, one string, then go to the next string, then go to the next string. If it feels getting a little sloppy, stop and rub it on the table or rub it between your hands, and it'll flatten out and it'll neaten out. If you make a mistake, stop and go back and correct it. It's not that difficult. The hardest thing that you have to do with this is to try to keep your 3 strands that you started with, try to keep them going straight down the rope. You don't want them to coil around the rope. You want to keep it straight down the rope. Okay? Looks pretty good. I'm going to stop for a second, rub it between my hands, trying to flatten it down a little bit. Okay? Looking pretty good. Alright, I should be able to do it maybe 1 or 2 more times. Over, under. Find out where you want to shove it through. Uncoil the rope. It's the same thing. Over and over again. It's just like weaving a basket for basketry merit badge. Just where you know where it has to go. So you just take your time and put it through. Over, under, over, under. Now let's do one more. I know this is difficult to see on the TV, but it is pretty simple once you get started. Over, under, over, under. Okay. Okay, that's the eye splice. And my string came undone, so I didn't have to cut it off. You can see how the rope is married together real nice. And that is an eye splice. Trim your ends off, and you have a nice eye splice. Okay, the short splice is to marry 2 pieces of rope together to make them one. And the way you do that, I've already taken the ends and tied the ends up so that the little fibers won't unravel on each piece. So to do this, you need to take and unravel the rope just a couple of turns on both pieces. Then what you want to do is interweave the 2 pieces together. Like so. So it's a nice, neat join together. At this point, you want to stop, take a piece of string, and right where the 2 of them mesh together, you want to stop and tie a string around there, nice and tight. You want to do exactly where they come together. That'll keep them from unraveling any more that you want. Now, from this point on, it's basically the same as the eye splice. You want to go over one, under the other. Over one, and under the other. You want to keep your piece going straight down the line on both sides. Do one at a time. Do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. One at a time until you've used up all your ends. Now let's try that and see how it works out. I don't know if you can see on the camera or not, but here's my end piece. I want to go over here and under there. I know it's difficult to see, but if you're trying to do this if you're working along as I'm doing this, you might be able to see what I'm talking about. Over, under. Uncoil the rope to where there's a big enough hole that you can stick one of the fibers through. Okay, now that you got one done, stop, turn the rope over a little bit. Now you can see that I'm going to go over this one and under that one. Okay, stop, turn the rope a third again. You can see that I want to go over this one and under this one. As I said before, it's just like weave in a basket. Over, under, over, under. Now, I got 3 done on this side. What I like to do is turn the rope around, so I'm doing the same thing all again, going the other way. Alright, I want to go over here and then under the next one. So I uncoil the rope a little bit, over, under, stop, go to the next one. I want to go over here and under here. Uncoil the rope a little bit, shove it through. Okay, stop. Go to the next third. I want to go over there, under here. Okay. Alright, I want to do this one here a little neater. Over and then under. There we go. Alright, now I've done one for each strand. I'm going each direction on each side of the rope, and you can see it's already starting to take shape. Okay, now lay it down, roll it, flatten it, put it between your hands, like so, trying to flatten it out. Okay, now I'm ready to do 3 more. Okay, as you can see, I've gone under here. Now I want to go over there and under there. So I uncoil the rope a little bit, put it through, turn it a third of a turn. I want to go over here and under here. Putting it through. Stop, turn it a third of a turn. I want to go over there and under there. Okay. Looking rather well. Okay, now I'm going to turn the rope back again and work from the other side. Doesn't matter where you start because all 3 are the same. Alright. I want to go over this one and under this one. Okay, third of a turn, over this one, under this one. Okay, over this one, under that one. Okay, now I've done 2 on each side. You see how it's taking shape. Okay, should be able to do at least 1 more on each side. Okay, so over, under, over, under. Once you get this far, now it's easy. You can really be able to see where it goes. And it doesn't take long to finish it up. Okay, switch the rope back. Now we're going to do the other side. string that we used in the middle before to hold it all together. We're going to snip that off. Okay, and now we have two pieces, same size rope, and we have them spliced together. Now if I can hold that real still for the camera to pick up. That's what it looks like. Just simply over and under, over and under, just like weaving a basket. And that is a short splice. Okay, the back splice or the end splice is a little more difficult because it starts with the crown knot. And on page 157, it'll show you step by step how to do the crown knot. You unravel the end of the rope. Now, first thing you got to do is you have to identify pieces as 1, 2, and 3. And it'll show you in the book what you do. We're going to call this 1, this 2, and the middle one 3. And what you do is you take 1, put it behind 2, and bend it over. Take 2, which is on this side, and you put it behind 1. Now that's difficult, but in the handbook it shows you very well. Now that hole that you just made here, there's where you're going to put number 3 through. And basically what you did is that's the start of running the rope back on itself. That's why they call it a back splice. And you got to slowly pull each strand equally. So now you have a knot at the end of the rope. And that's the effect you're trying to get. Almost like a propeller on an airplane. You got 3 going out in 3 different directions. That's the crown knot. Now from there, it's just like all the other splices where you go over, under, over, under. Okay? Let's try that. Alright, now I can see I need to go over there and under right there. So again, you uncoil the rope a little bit, and that's where you start putting your pieces. I'll go over that piece, under this piece. Just like all the other splices. Same thing with the next one. Over, under. This is easy to work with once you get to know the crown knot. Now the back splice or the end splice, 2 names for the same function, is used instead of whipping the end of the rope. So if you want to make your rope look spiffy, put an end splice on it. And that didn't take long at all, and I'm finished. That's an end splice. The life basket rescue harness, used to go around the victim's body so that he can be hoisted up a wall or be lifted out. And it goes like this. The life rescue harness starts out with a bowline on a bite. So you want to double up about 6 feet of rope Go about halfway down what you've doubled up, and that's where you want to put your loop for your ball on a bite. So ball on a bite, bring the bite through, around your whole knot, and pull it down. Okay, now you have the start of your rescue harness. There's your ball on a bite, the rescue rope with the tail. Okay, now we have the tail to the ball on the bite. We'll let that go for a second. Then we have the standing rope that they have on top of the cliff or wherever you're going to need rescue from. So you want to make a half hitch on the chest of your victim. So make a half hitch, put it over your victim's head. Going to work it so that it's snug. Okay, at this point, you put a bite in the rope, you bring it around this side, so it looks like that. Then take the bite and bring it through the loop you just made, like that. Now take the tail of the rope, the 3-foot piece that you left off at the beginning, and you place that through. And then you take what is going to be the rope that's going to go be rescued by. Watch how that gets pulled through. Pull through. Take the rest of the standing tail of the rope, put a couple half hitches in that, just to be on the safe side. And now you have a harness ready to be lifted. Okay, the diamond hitch. It's one of the oldest ways that people used to tie the materials they wanted to carry on a pack frame, or on a pack mule, or a pack horse, something like that. And it's used to use one length of rope that can be easily adjusted to get to. Okay, as you can see in this drawing, it's all one rope. It's very easy to do. Start at point number 1. Go back to point number 2. Bring it back to point 1. All right. And then it's just a matter of looping the rope from the corners back through the middle to the corners, back through the middle to the corner again, and back to the middle, and ending back where you started. And I'll show you how it's done like this. Okay. On the diamond hitch, you take your frame, you put your gear on the frame, you wrap it in a tarp. Now, this is how you attach everything so it stays together, attaching your bundle to your frame. You start out at point number 1, tie the rope onto 1, you come across to point number 2, you go back to point number 1, and go directly up to point number 3. Okay, you bring the rope back, and you twist this rope, because this is what's going to give you your diamond effect. Put 2 or 3 twists in it. Bring your rope through. Okay. Go to your upper right. Come back down to the bottom. Go back through. This is where you're making your diamond. Bring your rope through your diamond. Pull down. Go to your last point. And then go back to where you started and finish with a knot. Okay. And that's your frame with the diamond hitch. Okay. This tape was made as a practical review of your rope skills. Review this tape frequently to keep your skills sharp.